Let us start the session. This is the abstract IC 154, Accreditation and Post-COVID Era Safety Practices and Protocol. Our first speaker will be talking about ophthalmic OT layout and design. Dr. Mihir Mishra, would you please come to the dais and have your discussion, please? I'll stop.
Yeah, you can stop the share screen.
Yes, I have stopped.
Thank you. We'll start at 3:30, no?
Yeah. What is the time?
3:24. So still takes 6 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Ritumani can give a small introduction of the speakers also, from where they are.
Yeah, that can be done.
And after I introduce everyone, may I request everyone to come by their own with their turns?
Yes.
I will not be sharing the screen again. And I would like that each and everyone would, like, after each as
No,
per
you
the
can.
schedule.
You don't need to share the screen. You can invite.
Yeah.
You don't have to share the
Invite,
screen.
okay.
You invite that the next speaker is Dr. Deepshik Agarwal.
Yes,
like that, you
okay.
can invite.
Okay.
So no need to just share screen and show the speaker list.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can just.
And is Dr. Anupam there?
Yeah, he's coming. He is already there.
Yeah.
Hello, good
I'm also
afternoon,
there.
sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
So everything is right.
Shall I start introducing? Is it the time? 3:27, or shall we wait for some more 3 minutes more?
Yeah, 3 minutes more.
We can wait because we have 85 minutes total.
Yes.
So nothing to worry about.
Yes, okay.
We have some time. There is a program after for 4:55, no?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That is around 5 o'clock it will start.
Yeah, exactly at 5 it starts. So 4:55 to 5 p.m. is a short 5 minutes break.
Okay, right.
It is 3:29. With your permission, may I start the session?
Sure.
Yeah, we can.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ekta Ganwani. I welcome you all to AIOC session at Hall Helmholtz. This session will be about accreditation post-COVID era and A to Z of Heart of Ophthalmologist OT, safety practices and protocols. May I invite Dr. Mihir Mishra, Dr. Deepshika Agrawal, Dr. Anupam Sahu, Dr. Samrat Chatterjee, Dr. Sagarmoy Purkayastha, Dr. Gitumoni Sharma ji, and we can start the session now. Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, I would like to say my hearty thankful to the AIOS 2021 for inviting us for this instruction course. And first of all, I would thank my co-instructor also for accepting to talk in this beautiful session. We have with us Dr. Deepshika Agrawal, Director, Consultant Cornea and Anterior Segment, MGM Eye Institute, Raipur. We have Dr. Samrat Chatterjee, Consultant Cornea and Anterior Segment, MGM Eye Institute, Raipur. Then we have Dr. Mihir Mishra, Consultant Orbit, Oculoplasty and Oncology, MGM Eye Institute, Raipur. We have with us also Dr. Anupam Sahu, who is a Consultant Pediatric Ophthalmology and Squint, MGM Eye Institute, Raipur. Then we have Dr. Sagarmoy Purkayastha, Consultant FECO, Glaucoma and Comprehensive, HE Eye Care, Guwahati 2, and myself, Dr. Gitumoni Sharma, Consultant VR and UVA, ASG Eye Care, Guwahati 2. So let's have a breathtaking session in which we shall be discussing accreditation post-COVID era and A to Z of Heart of Ophthalmologist, safety practices and protocols. May I invite Dr. Mihir Mishra for the first talk, please.
Thank you, Dr. Gitumani, for inviting me for this instruction course. It's a very important instruction course because the OT is the heart of the hospital for a surgeon. So whatever type of surgeon he is, how much proficient he is, still if the OT conditions and ambience is not good, there is always a chance of failures. So coming to the ophthalmic OT layout and design, no financial interest, whatever. So operation theater is that specialized facility of the hospital where life-saving or life-improving procedures are carried out on the human body by invasive methods under strict aseptic conditions in a controlled environment by specially trained personnel to promote healing and cure with maximum safety, comfort, and economy. So it is advised that the building team visits as many as other complexes as possible to determine what works and what are to be done, because that is very important when you start to design your OT or the infrastructure. And it is also a good idea to consult other eye nurses or professionals surrounding you or visiting some hospitals and building facilities which is already present and established, so that you know what's happening there also, to have more broader view. The more people involved in the design, that is a wide group of experts, including the architect, engineer, including the doctors also, that will be of much help. So there are certain regulatory bodies, because whenever we come to some infrastructure to be done, then a lot of rules, regulations comes in for the state and also the local bodies. So there are bodies which has to be contacted before that. The National Building Code is there for the infrastructure. The Indian standards are there, very much particular about the ophthalmic OT, which comes under the general OT category. So it depends on how many beds and what are the number of things you are actually wanting to in your hospital. So it is basically for a 30 to 100 bed category. We have IPHS, we have certain part 1, part 2, part 3 different sections for the different type of infrastructure which is required. So coming to the National Building Code is a unified regulation which has been made all over India. So hospitals are classified as group C1 in NBC. And coming to the different specifications it has in its book elaborately, depending on the type of infrastructure you want. That is the corridors, it has a specific area, doors width, staircase width, and fire exit doors. So these are all specified in that National Building Code very elaborately. So the architect or engineer who is responsible for building the infrastructure of the of your hospital, that he may take care of all these things, and we have to have some idea also about that, so that nothing goes wrong in that way. Coming to the fire and life safety, this is most important because safety is the prime important whenever you come to any infrastructure building. Those are the classification of building as per safety, the type of construction which has to be done. These are all defined in that National Building Code. The general requirements like lifts, life safety is what are to be included in that, the fire zones, the fire protection, the evacuation process, the additional occupancy wise requirements. The annexes does have all the listings for what type of buildings should have what type of safety and where it should be there according to the floor wise. So detailed are given in this National Building Code. Coming to the NABH, if we are planning for a NABH accreditation in the future or presently also during the infrastructure, it's most ideal because it's very difficult to change the infrastructure over time when you think of going for the NABH accreditation. So according to NABH, they have defined actually the guidelines for air conditioning in operational theater. That is revised one is 2018, the latest one. So it comes under type B, the general OT for ophthalmic OTs. That consists of daycare surgeries and other also basic surgical disciplines. So we have to basically think of the type B of the air conditioning. So coming to the specification of OT sizes, which are standard. So these are the minimum requirements which should be there ideally. So 20 into 20 into 10 feet, that should be there with false ceiling to be considered in that. Occupancy, standard occupancy should be around 5 to 8% at any given point of time inside the OT. Equipment should be around 5 to 7 kilowatt per OT. It should not be more than that. And ambient temperature, humidity at each location to be considered while designing the system. So nowadays it's very easy to make up an OT because you have modular operation theater vendors are there. So it's not much of a headache, but the part of finances comes into play because it will be a slightly costly affair as compared to the normal OT which we are building. But if modular OT is done, then it will be ideal because it's a long-term investment. So coming to the location of OT, that is very important. You have to be segregated from a normal OPD, IPD or diagnostic services along with any support services. So it should be away from the crowd basically and should be separate. So mixing or crisscross of patient flow should be always avoided in the OT area. It should not be mixed up. So planning has to be done. So ideal should be ground floor should be OPD, IPD or diagnostic services, other services, and the OT should be confined to the first floor or a confined isolated area. So designing, there are various softwares which are available also, and of course this is not our part to do. So that is done by the architect and the designers. So they will take care of it. But we have to think of like our area and the infrastructure which we want, so we can just let them know what we want. So designing a safe environment should incorporate all the features that prevent and control risk of infection, fire, explosion, chemical and electrical hazards, because all these important things are included in the forming of the OT. So we should have well-designed, devised traffic patterns, material handling system, the disposal systems, the positive pressure and well-dispersed clean ventilation with high flow, unidirectional ventilation systems for special applications. So this will all contribute to a safe surgical environment. So coming to the layout at proper, so what it consists of actually, an operating suite, changing rooms, teaching rooms, storage, reception area and restrooms. So coming to the operation suite, it consists of an anesthetic room, the clean preparation room, scrub up area, operating theater, a sluice room, that is the CSSD or the central sterilization department, and the exit bay. So components of the OT complex, other parts are equipment management, patient safety and infection control, medication management, safety goals, staff training and management, infra and suprastructure, patient process, admission, transfer and discharge. These are the logistic things which has to be taken care in the process of making of the OT, and proper space has to be given for this type of things which is required also along with the OT complex. So these are some of the varied types of OT models which we have for depending on the one OT or two OT or three OT. Some NPCB guidelines are also given exactly what will be the dimension and other things. And we have three parts here. One is the patient in and patient out to the operating system. This is the main core operating room. And we have the sterilization department here. And we have the nurses and the staff. So there are three parts which is important, and that goes to a common area, that is the operating room. So coming to the zones, they are made because it segregates the very type of septic, aseptic, and the common areas. So it is basically depending on the cleanliness, and which the bacteriological count progressively diminished from the outer to the inner zones, or to the non-septic to the aseptic zones. So that comes to the differential decreasing positive pressure ventilation gradient from the inner to the outer zone. So it consists of an outer zone, clean zone, aseptic zone, and a disposal zone. I'll be coming to detail. So outer zone is a reception area, admission area, common. Then comes the clean zone, that is a changing room and patient preparation room, and the transfer zone also. The aseptic zone is mostly the core OT or the operation room, and also the scrubbing and grounding area, along with the part of CSSD. And disposal zone are the already used linen and disposal that are taken to the CSSD. So advantage of zoning is mainly it minimizes hospital infection, minimizes unproductive movement of staff, supplies, and patient, increases efficacy of the operating team members, ensures smooth workflow, decreases hazards in the operating room, ensures proper positioning of the equipments. So coming to the outer zone, it's a protective zone mostly, consists of the reception area, admission area, patient waiting area, and the patient changing area. The clean zones consist of the changing room for OR staff, the pre-op area, the block room, anesthetic room, post-recovery room, and transfer corridors for shifting of the patients to a OR. Then the aseptic zone is mostly the sterile area, that is the scrubbing, rounding, and the operating room as in the core, and part of the CSSD, where the sterilization process occurs. Then coming to the disposal area, that is where the already used materials or consumables from the OT comes to the CSSD. There is the dirty utility disposal area. From each OT, we have a hatch window. From there, it comes out to the CSSD. So these are the major components which are an integral part for making of an OT. That is operation theater wall, ceiling cladding system, laminar airflow, scrub sink, ceiling pendants, operation theater light, peripheral light, dirty hatch, pass box, writing or list boards, operation theater door. So these are all things which are important components and required to have the standards while doing it. So next important part is the AHU, that is the air handling unit, which actually has the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. So it regulates the humidity, temperature, and everything, including the airflow. So you should have a standard AHU system, and it should be unified to each OT theater. It should be separate in a better way. And it should be running 24/7 to keep OT free from bacteria. And in ideal condition, the blower can be run without any air conditioning. Next comes the part is the HEPA filter, that is the high efficiency particulate air filter that actually filters out all the microorganisms.
10 minutes are over, so you probably need to wrap up fast for the other speakers.
Yeah, sure. I think there will be a timer here. Okay,
Yes,
right.
sir, the timer actually rung the buzzer already.
Okay, right.
Buzzer, yeah.
HEPA, okay, HEPA filter, just 1 or 2 minutes. HEPA filter usually has a vital role in maintaining the indoor air quality by reducing fine airborne particles that can harbor bacteria, virus, minimize the risk of transmission. So airflow is unidirectional from the upper to the downside and to the sides. And UVC light are used just to rule out any microorganisms and also the virus. So OT ceilings and other systems have their own specification that has to be considered according to the size of the OT which has to be done, along with the lighting system. And walls have their own specifications, like external walls, internal walls, in between epoxy paintings. So these are all specified. So the engineer or the architect will take care of it. So the same thing applies to the flooring also. So epoxy coating should be used, copper grounding strips. And these are the modular OT's components which has to be there. So coming to the CSSD, you have a soil, clean, and sterile zone. So depending on the type of material which has been done, so the flow goes like this from the non-sterile area to the sterile area. So that has to be taken care of accordingly. So the design and planning of an OT complex will need compliance with regulations relating to the local administration such as the municipal corporation, government, pollution control board, fire safety department, water supply and drainage department, which is absolutely mandatory. So in the present era of evidence-based medicine, it becomes imperative to give maximum importance to planning an OT theoretical complex. Efforts to be made to conform to the standards laid down by the local bodies and international agencies to avoid legal litigations. And modular OT can be adopted as they are surgeon and patient friendly, compact, aesthetically designed, safe and conform to standards. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, may I ask you to unshare your screen so that
Yeah, sure.
I request Dr. Deepshikha Agrawal, madam, for her presentation on ideal ophthalmic operation theater along with OT etiquettes to keep troubles away.
Thank you, Dr. Gitumani. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yes,
So I'm not visible myself, but my screen is visible.
Yes,
you can make it
you
full
have
screen.
to make it play full screen. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, AIOC Scientific Committee and Dr. Gitumani for giving me this opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. I will be talking about the ideal ophthalmic operation theater. Already, Dr. Mihir has explained about the detail about the design.
Madam, your screen is not full
You have to
screen.
make it full screen. Yes, ma'am.
Lower right hand button.
Already did.
No, it is
No,
not.
here it's not coming fully.
Huh? Now?
No, it's not coming.
Just move the slide, maybe.
Huh? Yeah. Now?
Your slide is
Just
not
click
moving.
on the yellow bar is the upside, the enable editing.
So you can write, just
it
click
there
on
and
enable. Yeah, enable editing.
Nothing is there.
Yellow bar is there, no? In
No.
the top.
No, it
No.
is full screen in her computer, but not full screen here.
Okay.
Okay, so shall I make an end show?
Yeah, you not end show. You
No, not end show. Stop the full screen.
stop sharing, and
stop
just
sharing and then do it again.
Okay.
make it full screen first, the PowerPoint presentation, then you share the screen.
PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, make it full screen. Then you can share it.
Now?
Yeah, now you have to make full screen.
I'm press
No,
F5.
enable editing.
No, let one person guide her.
F5, if you can see the F5 button at the top.
Yeah, yes.
F5 button एक बार press. Share screen के बाद, after share screen, you can press the F5 button. F5 button now.
Okay. Now? No.
It's not working. Madam, click on that slide and then tap F5. Maybe that will work. एक बार
Abhi? No.
No.
I guess we can continue like this.
अच्छा
Yeah,
मैम
we can continue.
आपका
You can,
mouse pointer आप एकदम बॉटम ऑफ द स्क्रीन पे 94% लिखा है ना, उसके जरा से लेफ्ट पे एक स्लाइड शो वाला आइकन है, आप उस पे प्रेस करोगे तो स्लाइड शो स्टार्ट हो जाएगा एकदम नीचे नीचे।
अभी तो कुछ भी नहीं दिख रहा है।
She is full screen. She is seeing full screen, but it is not coming full screen here. So, madam, I think you continue as you are listening.
Anything is visible or nothing is visible?
No,
now
you're
the
not
sharing is stopped.
What I should do now?
Share it
You
again,
do
ma'am.
one thing, just open the PowerPoint through share screen. That's all
PowerPoint
you can
is
do.
there.
Yeah, no, you go to Zoom and share the screen.
हाँ, Zoom में तो क्या?
Yeah, now it's fine.
दिख रहा
Yes,
है?
madam. Now it is fine.
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
it is
Now
fine.
it's fine.
Yes, yes.
Just go
Okay.
first. Yeah, that's fine. Now we can start.
Thank you. Sorry for this disturbance, but I am not visible for myself, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay. But
Okay.
slides
So
are visible.
no financial interest. So why these ideal operation theaters are important? Because surgical care is an integral part of eye care system, and ophthalmitis is the most devastating complication of any ocular surgery. Surgical site infections are the second most common cause of hospital-acquired infection. So every step should be taken to reduce the devastating complication of surgery. If we look at the evolution of the operation theater, so operation theaters has evolved from a simple room with a minor equipments to a packed theater, and eventually to the sterile and special environment of the modern operating theaters from 18th century to 19th century. This is a consequence of acceptance of germ theory of disease that was theorized in mid 16th century and validated in 19th century. So if we look at the historical perspective of surgery of eye, so it was started from the house as a couching, then camps in a school, dharmshala, community halls, hospital in a primary and community health centers. Other venues are in train, van, ship, and plane. So now, what is ideal operation theater? An ideal operation theater is an environment in which all sources of pollution and micro-environmental alterations are kept strictly under control. Fundamental principles: no harm to the patient and surgeon. A standard operation theater protocol should be maintained, and operation theater should be customized according to the size of hospital, patient's turnover, available resources, and future need. So what includes this ideal operation theaters? Location, design, environment, equipment, instruments, central sterile supply department, other supplies, traffic in operation theater, dress code, maintenance, OR surveillance, OR biohazardous waste disposable, safety measures, handling of emergency, and proper ongoing training of the staff. So location, it should be a low-rise building. OT should be separated from the general traffic and air movements of the rest of the hospital. Space of OT should be accommodate the needed equipments of the staff. It should be minimum of 450 square feet, while if we want to accommodate more general anesthesia and other equipments, so it should be 576 square feet. The door should be adequate with width of 1.2 to 1.5 meter, sliding, and a small window should be on the door. Surface should be slip resistant with minimum joint, seamless wall, and washable paint. Pendant for the pipelines, services like oxygen, nitrous oxide, medical vacuum, compressed air, and electric sockets. So this is a pendant. Lighting, ceiling mounted lamps with illumination of 500 lux with minimal glare. UPS of adequate capacity for OT light, microscope, machines, monitors, anesthesia machine until generator backup takes over. Audiovisual system is also important in operation theater for recording as well as for the demonstration and teaching. Scrub sink should be for 2 to 3%. Water should be filtered. Water tap should be hand, foot, or sensor operated. Water tap should be of 10 centimeter above the wash basin. And adequate continuous water supply should be available in operation theater. Environment of operation theater is very important, which is controlled by the ventilation and temperature. During surgical procedures, dust particles, textiles, fibers, skin scales, and respiratory areoles are loaded with the viable microorganisms are released from the surgical team in operation theater. Risk of infection is significant if aerobic bacterial count is in the range of 700 to 1800 bacteria carrying particles. But if it is insignificant when count is 180 per cubic meter. High quality air is essential to control the risk of surgical infection. So direction of airflow should be from operation theaters towards main entrance. Efficient ventilation controls temperature and humidity in operation theater. And as Dr. Mihir has mentioned, the separate air handling unit should be in each theater to prevent any cross infections. Airflow should be unidirectional. HEPA filters have a 99.7% efficiency in removing the airborne particles of 0.3 micron and above by ceiling mounted laminar airflow. So positive pressure system should be in operation theater. There should be 5 centimeter H2O from ceiling of OT to downwards and outwards to push out air from OT. Relative humidity should be 40 to 60% to be maintained, and temperature should be between 20 to 24 degrees centigrade. In one operation theater, one table of 1.8 meter long, instrument trolley of 0.9 meter long, while working space around the table should be 1.2 meter. And in per operation theater, per operation table, there should be 3 complete cataract surgical instruments should be available. Unwanted equipment and instruments should not be kept in operation theater. In pre-op area, where the waiting and recovery, the monitor should be available. Oxygen gas suction pipe should be connected with the central facility, but standby local facility should also be available. Patient's stretcher, trolley, vehicle, wheelchair should also be available. In central stage department, the instrument, equipment, and material should are sterilized. At the end of the operation, the buzzer system from operation theater to CSSD staff for information that hatch window is ready for the cleaning. So this is hatch window. Used instrument should be returned to the CSSD for the cleaning through this hatch window, and the dirty corridor should be patrolled by the staff. And after sterilization, the reissue of the instrument should be from the another window. There should be controlled traffic. And the other facility should be available for the communication, data management, satellite stores, safety measures, restroom, changing room, lockers for the staff. Maintenance again is very, very important for the operation theater. Comprehensive maintenance and annual maintenance contract should be available for the everything. And spare planning should also be there. Maintenance of air conditioning filter system also important. Dress code is also important for the patient as well as for staff, especially in this COVID era. Everyone has to take care of all the dress code. Proper ongoing training is also again important, because in the medical science, every day new technologies, new equipments are available. So the staff and the doctor should be trained with all these new systems. So in conclusion, the ideal operation theater can provide maximum benefit to maximum number of patients, save surgeons from stress, prevent devastating complications like endophthalmitis, and improve cost effectiveness of the hospital. These are my references. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. In spite of the technical glitch for being on time, it was really a wonderful presentation. May I now request Dr. Anupam Sahu for his talk on instrument cleaning and sterilization in ophthalmic OT. Dr. Anupam, please.
Thank you, Dr. Geetumani, and a very good afternoon to everybody. 1 minute. I hope my slides are visible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'll be talking about instruments, cleaning and sterilization. So when, as the previous two speakers have very well explained, that the OT, the theater complex and our infrastructure is very, very important. However, we also know that instrument cleaning and sterilization is as important, because from early times it has been known that endophthalmitis and all these are very visual threatening risk factors. So considering that, you can see that even old hospital buildings had their IOT separate. So over the recent times, we have found out that conditions like toxic anterior segment syndrome can be caused because of mainly inadequate or incomplete sterilization or inadequate cleaning, like inadequate flushing of phaco and irrigation aspiration handpieces, use of enzymatic cleaners, detergents at the wrong concentration, and ultrasonic baths. These are things that you usually use, but if they are not done properly, they can lead to a toxic anterior segment syndrome. So let us see what all we need to do to ensure that our instruments are clean and they are not damaged during this process. So it needs inspection, cleaning, drying, then a storage, proper storage, packaging and sterilization, and finally documentation. So coming to inspection, immediately after surgery, it's important that the instrument should be scrutinized carefully for defects, debris, etc. And they should be cleaned immediately. So once you have done that inspection and found out what needs to be done, the instruments and everything needs to be cleared immediately. For example, this is being done at the OT table itself. Once the instruments are found to be dirty, they should be cleaned immediately because they should not be allowed to settle down on the instruments. And once you have done that, even the cannulated instruments are to be touched at the point of view. I hope my video is going well. Everybody can see the video.
Yes, sir, it's going well.
Yes.
Yes.
So once, and these cannulated instruments are one of the common causes for toxic antibiotics. They're not clean. And after that, once you have done that, you should ensure that once the instruments are in the CSSD, they should be immediately washed under running water, and then they should be cleaned by the 4-bowl technique or by ultrasonic cleaners. I'll come to the ultrasonic cleaners later. So in the 4-tray technique, basically you use 2 trays with disinfectants and then 2 trays with distilled water. So again, remember, it's very important that the last 2 trays are as important, and each tray should be given its proper time. 5 minutes in the first tray, 10 minutes in the second, 10 minutes in the third tray, and then 10 minutes again in the fourth tray. The last 2 trays are important to clean away all the disinfectants, because if they remain, they may not be completely neutralized by the sterilization process. We use the Savlon for this. You can use any of the disinfectants that are available, but the proper concentration as described should be used. And thorough cleaning of the instruments with the help of a toothbrush is done to remove the debris, especially from toothed instruments and those with hinges. Use a soft toothbrush and do not use metal brush, steel wool or abrasive powders for cleaning. They will destroy the surface finish on instruments and lead to corrosion quite early. Joints, locks and serrations in the instruments must also be cleaned well. It is in these places that the debris is not removed clearly, and that leads to corrosion. Coming to enzymatic cleaners. Now, these are not usually indicated for intraocular surgeries because there is not too much blood or any debris in them. But in case of extraocular surgeries, oculoplastic surgeries, you can go ahead and do them. Again, cleaning is very important because these contain some exotoxins which may not be neutralized by the sterilization process. So it should be used basically in terms of in those cases where excessive debris is there or immediate cleaning is not possible. There are some enzymatic cleaners. One of them is 3M Rapid Multi-Enzyme Cleaner. No financial this thing. Out of this, instruments, they should be placed in this solution for 8 to 9 minutes. And then, as I said, it's important to rinse and dry the instruments well afterwards. Coming to ultrasonic cleaners, again, ultrasonic cleaners should be used just to dislodge tissue and other particles. And then following that, it's better to go ahead and do the 4-tray technique. So this again should be done only for those instruments that have too much debris in them. And remember that while keeping instruments in the basket, they should not touch each other or they will damage. So we have done the inspection, the cleaning, and then after that, you should need do the inspection again. And once you are sure that everything is clean, you need to dry your instruments properly. If they are not dried, then the moisture will be
Video, audio,
yeah.
Video, audio should be muted. That is causing disturbance.
Yeah. Okay. So this fine. So once this aeration has been done, it should be ensured that there is dry. You should not use cloth to clean the surfaces, as it may leave lint and the surface finish may be damaged. So you have dried them and then you need to store them properly. Before sterilization, storage is important. Surgical instruments are usually used as a set. So once you store them, ensure that the instruments have proper markings so you can actually mark which tray it is a part of, and that tray should also be marked so that you know that this instrument belongs to this tray. And they should be placed on clean linen or silicone mats, and the tips of blades, scissors, they should be tipped with silicone sleeves. So after that storage, you need to pack these things properly, and before that, ensure that any moving parts, joints or locks, if they need lubrication, use surgical grade silicone or Teflon spray. Normal ordinary lubricating oil should not be used, and instruments should be free of all debris before lubrication. So all instruments, they need to be packed before sterilization, so that the sterilization, the most important part is that sterilization should be maintained after the procedure is completed. If you do not pack them properly, sterilization effect will not last that long. So here again, you can see that packing varies according to the method of sterilization used. So this is for steam autoclave, where you do double packing. This is the first layer, and then the second layer. The second layer is such that it can be non-sterile and it's opened up in the sterile table. Same for ethylene oxide, except that there are a few differences. Again, you need to clean them properly and then dry them. Once they are dried, you need to ensure that the tips are not damaged by placing them in their proper place. And then you seal pack them in plastic containers. Again, double packing is done so that the outside, even if the outside packing gets unsterile, the inner packing should remain sterile. And always use indicators along with each pack that you are sterilizing. So after your packaging, you then need sterilization. So for ophthalmic use, it's mostly sterilization that is needed. For OPD instrumentations and all, you can do high level of disinfection, which I'll not be talking out here. I'll be talking basically about sterilization of surgical instruments. And again, there is disinfection that can be done, and earlier it was done. However, thermal and chemical methods are not advisable for ophthalmic instrumentation. For sterilization, the best possible method is the steam sterilization. There are many types of autoclaves that are available. They are dependable, non-toxic, inexpensive, sporicidal, and can penetrate fabrics well. The dry heat or hot air ovens are also there, which can be done for some articles that can get damaged by steam. Example, sharps, also ointments. Ethylene oxide provides low temperature sterilization for heat-sensitive articles, for example, plastic articles and all. So for steam autoclave, it's important to understand that there are different modes for each autoclave, and some autoclaves, and each autoclave has a different setting. So usually, but the temperature that you need to understand that it should be above 121 degrees centigrade and pressure should be above 20 psi for your sterilization to be effective. And here again, indicators should be placed at each level so that you ensure that not only is your sterilization procedure done, you also realize that it's been done with the indicators. And autoclave instruments should not be used after 48 hours. And if they are being kept for overnight surgeries, then you can actually keep them in such area where moisture is not there. So every instrument has its different speed time, and accordingly they should be covered and then kept in the steam autoclave. Ethylene oxide gas sterilization, this is used for disposable surgical blades, refines, retinal probes, lenses, eye drapes, eye shields. Other plastic items that can be sterilized by these are by EO gas, and this is the EO gas cartridge that is used for the EO gas sterilization. Remember that it is toxic and potentially explosive. Due to its toxic nature, an aeration period of 72 hours is needed. Okay, and a microbiological control, that is a biological indicator. Here you can see the indicator that is mandatory, and it can be maintained if the packaging is maintained for up to 1 year. Flash sterilization is not recommended because it's a dry, it does not use the dry cycle. It's preferable to have your instruments dry, but it can be used in between cases if the instruments are used immediately, but transport should be done in a sterilized manner. Again, coming to indicators, there is a different chapter on indicators, but then indicators, as I mentioned, should be used at every level important from medico-legal purpose. Yeah, just one more slide. measures the efficacy of a procedure. It helps us to record them, and we should keep recording them in our documents. So to complete, never wipe instruments between cases with spirit, ether, or acetone. Surgical instruments should never be boiled in between cases. Surgical instruments should be sterilized after every case. Instrument set once opened is considered contaminated even if it's not used, and sterilization techniques should be followed strictly. Regular maintenance of sterilization equipments are essential for their proper functioning, and indicators should be used with every set, ringer lactate bottles, etc., and document every step. Thank you. So this is a guideline that you can refer later on in JCRS 2018 by David Chang. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like all the attendees, whoever is attending the session, to have the question and answer session. We are having 10 minutes time for that, and we would be very happy to answer all your questions if you are having any, because this is a very important session for all the ophthalmologists. Now, may I request Dr. Sabrat Chatterjee to talk about operating room, that is the microbiological surveillance of ophthalmic operation theater.
Thank you, Dr. Geetu for this opportunity. And I would like to thank the scientific committee for inviting us to present this talk. I'll be talking on operation room surveillance. Till now, the previous speakers have highlighted how the operation room needs to be built and how it should be cleaned and sterilized. But how the operation, whether the operation room sterilization and disinfection is going according to the need, how is it known? So then that is done by OR surveillance, where collection, analysis, and interpretation of all this data that you collect from monitoring and implementing the different measures in sterilization are collated, and some action is taken on that, and that is known as OR surveillance. And the goal is to prevent surgical site infection, and we all know that we don't want end off in our post-operative patients. So whenever we have a new facility, these new facilities should undergo cleaning and fumigation for 3 days continuously, and on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th day, you need to do an OR surveillance to find out whether the cleaning and the disinfection process has gone accordingly. So this surveillance basically checks on how effective has been the fumigation and the disinfection and the sterilization processes in the OT. For an existing facility, it again makes, it depends on the cost benefit ratio. You can do a OR surveillance every week, but usually once a month is sufficient enough. So again, at the end of, you do the cleaning and fumigation and disinfection for all the 4 weeks, and then have a fixed day where you do the OR surveillance. You can also rotate the days so that your OT staff are kept on their toes, so they do not know when the surveillance can be done. So makes them more, that may make it more effective. So for material, you need a routine culture, you need sterile swabs, some liquid media, some solid media, and you need some biomonitor. So these are the materials that you need to conduct a OR surveillance. The sample collection should be done during the first hour. We need to label all the samples that we take, and it can be done by either a microbiology technician, or you can even train your operating room nurses to take this sample. And usually this sterile cotton, you can see out here, there's a cotton tipped sterile swab that needs to be moistened with a liquid media, and then you need to take the samples. So how is sample, where all should you take the samples? It can be collected from the OT walls, preferably behind where the surgeon sits, from the AC ducts, both the inlet and the outlet, from the operating table. It is a good practice to take it from the head end because we operate at that end, and also to take it from the microscope handles of the operation room microscope, and from the surface of the operation room trolley. And this is taken by a cotton swab that is dipped in a liquid media. And for the water, you need to take it from the your water source, from the tap, and you can directly collect it into a sterile vial, and you need to collect the midstream. Air sampling can be done with two different methods. I'll emphasis on this more simpler and more economical method, because that is what is available with all of us. So you can take a blood agar, the red media, the red plate is blood agar, and this clear transparent opaque clear transparent media is a sebrodextrose agar. So you take this, put them on the OT table at a distance of near about 1 meter from the floor, and then you leave the room for 30 minutes. And this should be done without the AC on, and it should be done before anybody enters the OT. So a good practice is to do your surveillance on a Sunday and the previous day you have, in the evening, you have done all your sterilization and disinfection, and you can do that. The other is an air sampler. Now the air sampler, these are commercial machines that suck in air, and then you have a media that can be placed inside, and it sucks in the air and exposes the media to the plate. There are different formulas for calculating it, but the simplified criteria is that if you have more than 10 bacterial colonies in a Petri dish, then it is significant. And if you have even a single colony of fungal colony, then that is significant. The laboratory processes are routine, which can be done by any microbiology lab, where you do it for aerobic and anaerobic media in appropriate conditions. Then we have chemical indicators. Dr. Sahu had touched briefly on that. There are around 6 classes of chemical indicators. Now, the most important thing to understand is that this gradation from 1 to 6 does not mean from poor to very good ones. So it doesn't mean that if you are doing it class 6, that is the best, because these are actually generations, and each of these indicators measure a particular sterilization process. For example, the Bowie-Dick. Now the Bowie-Dick only sees for steam penetration. So it will see whether if you so these are the plates. This is a sterile. This is an unexposed Bowie-Dick sheet, and this is placed inside a bunch of other similar sheets, and then it is exposed. So it actually sees for steam penetration. While say class 5 or class 6 indicators, you all might have seen that. So these check both for temperature, pressure, and your steam penetration. So these are different, and you need to mix and match both. So you need to do a class 2, that is a Bowie-Dick, at least if you can, if it's cost effective for you, before you do any of this autoclave sterilization in the morning. And once you see that your steam is working, then for each subsequent load, you can put in a vapor line, that is a class 5 indicator, or a Steriking, that is a class 6 indicator. And these you can put both on top of the your pack and inside also. A cheaper way is that you use the vapor line or a class 5 or class 6 indicator on the top, and use a class 1, the strips that you can see out here inside. So that way also you know whether your surface of your pack and also the deep part, that is the instrument, are getting sterilized or not. And you need to do this with every pack. Then there are biomonitors. The biomonitors are different for steam and ethylene. You can't use the chemical indicators to measure this. So you also need to do a biomonitoring for steam. And that you use a specific, you have different types of bacilli spores. For steam process, you have Bacillus stereothermophilus, while you use the Bacillus subtilis for the ethylene oxide. And you place these biomonitors deep inside the pack, where it should not be placed on top or on the bottom, but deep inside in the center part, so that this is where actually is where you get the penetration is important in this. So you need to place it deep inside, just to see whether your steam and temperature is reaching the center of the load. And then these spores are actually placed in a small glass vial. So once you expose it, then you need to crush it. Now the spores are released into this solution, that's a media. And if your sterilization has been good, all the spores would have been killed. So by crushing the vial, there is no change in color after incubation. But if there is viable bacteria, then that means your sterilization process has not worked. There will be a color change. So that is how you see whether the biomonitors are there. So if there's a color change after incubation, then that is not great. Then whatever you do, you need to maintain registers and maintain the documentation of your OR surveillance reports, and these you can share it with your infection control committee so that if there is any flaws, any gaps, that can be addressed. So the take-home message is periodic OR surveillance is necessary to keep a check on sterilization. So however good OT you have made, modular, however good equipments you have, however good processes you are using, you need to check on the processes to prevent operating room and surgical site infections. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Samrat, for having such a good presentation for us. It was very nice to know about the microbiological surveillance of the ophthalmic operation theater. Next, I would like to call upon Dr. Sagarmoy Purkastha to talk about changes in ophthalmic operation OT for safety practices post-COVID era. As this is a very recent ongoing topic, we would like to have his lecture, please. Dr. Sagarmoy, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Geetamani. And I thank the AIOS Scientific Committee for giving me this opportunity. My presentation topic is changes in the ophthalmic theater in the post-COVID era. So in this era of COVID-19, we healthcare professionals are faced with the challenge of minimizing the risk of viral transmission to us. Ophthalmologists, as we are, we rely on close patient contact to examine the ocular diseases resulting in the exposure of the nasopharynx due to the dispersion of the viral droplets. Now, this is of particular concern when the patient time is prolonged, such as when we are performing surgery, we are getting exposed to the patient for a longer time, and that is actually a concern. Now, as we all know, the most common modes of acquiring the COVID infection are, number one is inhaling the aerosols that is generated during speaking, coughing, or sneezing by an infected person. Next is the fomites or from the surfaces. When a person gets infected, if he touches the surface and then touches his nose, mouth, or eyes. Now, both these modes of transmission can be prevented by simple 3 steps like sanitization to be done frequently, wearing the mask always, and maintaining a safe distance between each individual. Now, the concern that we have as ophthalmologists are, number one is that we all know that viral load in the conjunctiva and tears have thought to be low, but the viral load in the vitreous and the potential transmission of the virus was still now known, not very widely known. So this concern was mainly during the first phase of COVID pandemic that had come last year. So we also know that the risk of aerosol transmission of infection in the operation rooms has been well described. Surgical procedures like phacoemulsification and pars plana vitrectomy, which are high-speed machines, are considered to be aerosol generating procedures. Now that gave a concern to all the surgical ophthalmologists. So whether from these aerosols, one can get an infection from an infected patient. So apart from the safety measures that we have to take, apart from the normal measures, the COVID, from the advent of the COVID pandemic, few important things we have introduced, like all patients at the entry, all the patients and the attendants are screened for the temperature and SpO2 level. We take a history of travel, whether any fever or cough the patient has been suffering from is elicited. Then the patient is provided, patient and the attendant are provided with hand sanitizers. Wearing of a face mask is compulsory. If suppose the patient has not come with one, we try to provide and then only we let the patient enter along with the attendant to the hospital. And as much as possible, only one attendant is allowed, except in case of kids and old patients who might need more help. Also, we prefer visit by prior appointments. The doctors and the staffs in the hospital are to wear personal protective equipments. We ensure that regular sanitization and disinfection of the surfaces are done throughout the day of the whole hospital. Strict hand hygiene protocols are followed, and social distancing is practiced with alternate sitting arrangement in the waiting area. Now you can see here a few of the pictures which show that we have the temperature thermometer, the sanitizer, and the pulse oximeter. Then the reception area where we are maintaining the distance, the waiting area where alternate sitting arrangement has been made, and all the optometrists and all are wearing the PPE kits and then examining the patients. Even we can place a shield in the chamber where we sit, so that the patients, when they cough or talk, the aerosol is not generated to us. And also we maintain a safe distance when the patient or the attendant sits from us. Regular sanitization is carried on, and these all have to be monitored very carefully so that each and every step is being followed. Subsequently, in the OT, that was when the patient had entered our hospital. Subsequently, when the patients are posted for surgery, many different techniques have been followed. Like you can see here, the draping part, the patient as well as the even the microscope has been included in the draping, and the draping is so much so that the aerosol generation could have been stopped. So these were all during the first phase when we were very much concerned and we didn't know how the COVID would behave. You can see here the operation surgery is going on, and the assistant as well as the surgeon is wearing the PPE kit and operating. We can see one more picture here where the surgeon is also wearing a face shield. I don't know how he might have been looking through the microscope. Maybe he is doing a surgery where the microscope was not needed. But all these had pushed us into such a cumbersome situation where we need to do surgeries, but we need to protect ourselves as well. So coming to the investigation part, routine pre-op investigations were to be carried out along with special precautions during biometry, B-scan or syringing. Also, we ensured in all our surgical patients, if those were elective, we ensured a negative RT-PCR test. And if any emergency surgeries had to be posted, we at least do the rapid antigen test and subsequently wait for the RT-PCR report. Inside the operation theater, the operation theaters are equipped with AHU, which ensures that it is safe from microorganisms. Only one patient is operated at a time. Patients' eyes are cleaned with betadine before surgery. Although these are routine procedures, but still we are more careful during at this era. Every patient is provided with a disposable cap, mask, and foot cover before surgery, and surgeries are performed under topical anesthesia as far as possible. Also, disposable single instruments are used as far as possible. Trolley sheets are changed after every surgery. New sheets and drapes are used for each patient. And after every case, the OR is cleaned thoroughly. So these we have been earlier also, we have been following up before this era, but during this, we should be more careful and it should not be missed at all. So when talking about the last year, when the first phase of COVID had come, so there were many operation guidelines which were released. Also, the AIOS had released some guidelines. So some of these guidelines we had followed during that time, but subsequently with more research, we found that the aerosol generation through phacoemulsification or from the vitrectomy, those are very less. Those were not less than 10 microns in size. And so it actually doesn't pose a risk to the surgeon if the surgeons and the operative staff, they maintain proper other COVID protocols like wearing face masks and other things properly. So you can see I'm back to the original form. This time in the previous year, I tried to operate with the PPEs and all, which was so cumbersome. And subsequently, when the researchers showed that it is not that dangerous if we can take proper precautions. So I'm back to my original form of surgery. Now, to conclude, are we really dealing with the post-COVID era? Because the COVID, I think we have to live with the COVID, we have to coexist with the COVID. So it is not actually a post-COVID era that we have to live, and we have to follow these protocols always, and it should be a new normal for us. And second factor is we are trying to include RT-PCR or rapid antigen tests into our routine preoperative investigations until further research shows that it's not needed. And we should consider every patient who enters the hospital as a potential COVID patient. And because every patient, we should also consider as a potential surgical patient. So we should follow all the safety protocols that have been advocated for COVID. And also we should ensure the vaccination of all the hospital staffs and doctors, and if possible, motivate all the attending patients so that we can all fight the COVID and coexist with the COVID and carry on our duties as ophthalmologists. Thank you.
That was indeed very good. It's because I never knew that it will be a post-COVID era, whether I am writing correct or not during the time of submission of the abstract, because I never knew that COVID, we have to exist simultaneously with COVID. So next, I would like to share my screen.
Yeah, Dr. Gitumani will be talking on what changes I made in my OT while NABH accreditation process.
Good afternoon, everyone. I shall be discussing about what changes I made in my OT while NABH accreditation process. I don't have any financial interest. Actually, NABH guidelines, it has come new.
Ma'am, share your screen. Your screen is going off.
Okay.
Yes,
Again,
now it's showing the full screen. Yeah.
It's not moving. Yeah, okay. Is it visible to you?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. So the guidelines which are been given, it has come in August 2020, the recent one, and we have 10 chapters of it. The standards are 10 chapters, and it gives a very stringent guidelines of various procedures to be followed, and many of these are applicable in the operation theater. These have to be fulfilled in order to obtain the accreditation certification. I shall be talking about MGM Eye Institute Raipur, which walked through the road of NABH certification 3 years back, and I had the opportunity to walk through the road till the time it was NABH certified. And we needed more than a year to set up all the requirements up to the NABH standards, in spite of having a very good infrastructure. Though it did not have to change the major structures, but had to undertake a number of modifications to fulfill the requirements to meet the standards. The following are the modifications which were carried out for this purpose. In spite of having a very good OT, we are having 10 modulars OTs with dirty corridor, and to the AHUs, everything been standardized so nicely. But in spite of that, basically no major structural change were needed. But for the administrative and documentation purpose, we have to adopt it quite a few. And amongst that, the air conditioning in the OT, which comes in for ophthalmology type B in the standards of OT of NABH, this has to be maintained. We had to come up to the standard of NABH. Though modular OT, as my previous speaker had told, that it is not mandatory requirements, but we had to maintain the air changes per hour, air velocity, positive pressure, air handling in the OT, including the air quality, which we had learned how to maintain as per the standards in the OT, inside the OT. The service panels for servicing the filters, motors, and blowers to be provided, HEPA filters efficiency, and the air quality at the supply. So for all these, we had to maintain a register, and these registers are to be very strictly and stringently maintained. Temperature, humidity, and these registers will be checked once the NABH teams visits your hospital. So this is very stringent, and you should know how to record up to the standard, whatever is provided. And the design considerations for the OT standards are, as already been talked about, AHU should be a one dedicated one, and the outdoor air intakes, window and split AC should not be used in any type of OT because they are pure recirculating units and have pockets for microbial growth which cannot be sealed. For old constructions, or if you have to undergo retrofitting, then if there is a space constraint, ceiling suspended AHU is permitted. The DX unit with AHU is recommended for OTs where retrofitting solution is possible. All requirements spelled out for new construction and type A and type B OTs above in terms of air changes, particulate count, positive pressure, temperature, humidity, and air velocity will have to be met by such OTs in old constructions or ACOs. This is new for us, that during the non-functional hours, AHU blowers will be operational round the clock, maybe without temperature control. Variable frequency devices may be used to conserve energy. Air changes can be reduced to 25% during non-operating hours through VFD, provided positive pressure relationship is not disturbed during such period. Then next comes the maintenance of the system, and the validation of the system should be done every 6 monthly. And we check all the parameters here. It is very mandatory. Then preventive maintenance of the system is recommended that periodic preventive maintenance be carried out in terms of cleaning of pre-filters, microwave filters at the interval of 30 days. Preventive maintenance of all the parts of AHU is carried out as per manufacturer's recommendations. So earlier we didn't have signages, but now we are having signages in all the areas. Earlier with the signages, and one more important thing is that there are zoning areas which has to be created, and it has to be demarcated very stringently. And next, the signages, like we had beautiful signages here as shown in the picture down, but along with that now comes up the floor plan of the hospital along with the fire escape plan. Hand wash audit are done because it has to be maintained very stringently, and the audit report, if there is any fallacy in the report, the corrective and preventive action are to be taken as and when needed. So we can see even in the slide down here, even the annual function where the staff will be presenting like state dance there, but later on during and after the training of NABH, they started showing the hand washing steps, even in their annual functions. The PPE kit has to be worn during the time of sterilization and handling of the instruments. And there is a biomedical audit report which are to be provided and presented. And if any kind of deficiency is there in handling the instrument, then the corrective and preventive action are needed to be taken. So audit reports are very important. Then we had a crash card, and it is maintained as per the color codes and the look-alike, sound-alike drugs are to be kept as per the color codes, however is available. Defibrillator are in place. The fire extinguisher are very important at each and every point wherever required. And the staff, whoever are engaged inside the hospital, they have to go for a fire drill. That is very important. They should know at what point of time, at any point of emergency, they should come out of the fire if anything is there. The public announcement system is very well in place. It has to be there at each and every corner of the hospital. Then the specimen from the hospital, there has to be a lead specimen transport box specifically. The biomedical waste management has to be very stringent, along with each and every point during the transport also, and at the time of disposal also. At the final point, there has to be color coded, specifically color coded rooms for disposal of the waste, according to the standards which were given in Biomedical Waste Management Rule 2016. So here I have already told about the crash card. International patient safety goals are very much followed. It has to be followed, and all the 6 goals are to be fulfilled. We have to have a needle stick injury protocol to be followed. Then Signalock and Brownie disc test, these are already been discussed. BP apparatus, very important. FMS 3 core says that the hazardous materials are identified and used safely within the organization. So mercury sphygmomanometer is out because it is considered as a hazardous. Mercury is considered as a very hazardous material. Water testing report are strictly followed. Implant registers have come in. Then we present the quality reports. There are various indicators of quality which are to be presented every month. And if any kind of deficiency in any of the indicators of quality, then the immediate corrective and preventive action has to be taken so as to come back again to the standard provided in the NABH. So these are to be presented to the invigilator committee. Then the OT and CSST manuals are there. All the forms are being, whatever were deficient, they have come into being and it's been strictly followed. So to summarize, few of the structural changes and administrative, there are quite a few about the registers I have mentioned. I have mentioned about the signages and the audit, BP handling machines and the audit, crash cart, left specimen, transport box, defibrillator, biomedical waste management, fire extinguisher. And one major thing is there is complete change of the laundry and linen handling for the infection control committee. So the laundry and linen has to be the standards. There are standards for that also, how to handle it inside the hospital campus. Then the water testing report, implant registered, quality indicator, forms and manuals are in place to have, ultimately to have the certificate in our hand. And the overall, the changes were helpful to improve the efficiency of the operation theater processes. Why do we need this accreditation? The benefits are the benefits for the patient. Of course, it is there. And there is benefits to the organization because it raises community confidences. Benefits, as I have shown in my 2 videos, that there are continuous learning. The learning curve goes upper and upper each time they go for training, good working environment, and they develop leadership. Benefits to the paying and regulatory bodies as well. So finally, accreditation provides an objective system of empanelment by insurance and other third parties, and it provides access to reliable and certified information on facilities, infrastructure, and level of care. Thank you all for your patient hearing.
The hall is open for question and answer now. There are also 2 questions that I could see in the question and answer section.
There are none presently. It has been answered. Can you
Oh.
again check?
In chat, it is there in chat.
Chat section.
Yeah.
Is it visible to any of the co-instructors, please?
Dr. Mihir, may I ask you, like if someone already has an operation room with a split air conditioning, and so can you say what all modifications would they require? Because when you're starting off your solo practice, at that time to have a modular theater with separate AHU, these are difficult issues. So my question to both you and Dr. Deepshika would be is that for someone who cannot start off with a modular theater, what all things they can do in their operation room so that it still makes their surgery safe? Structural.
Yeah, already Dr. Mir has discussed about modular theaters are not the essential for anyone, but those already existing operation theaters are. So there are two, three things that should be taken care. One is like about these air handling units. Because if it is a central air condition, so there should be separate with the other system, so there should be no mixing of any this air from the other environment. And fire extinguishers, those are very important for the this thing operation theater. And the basic requirement.
I think we have the HEPA filter, which is a compact HEPA filter is also present, which can be placed over the patient's table, OT table. And second thing, even with the split AC, if we conform to the standards like particulate count and other things are taken care of regularly through microbiological surveillance, and the filters are properly cleaned, that even the split AC will work out if you have financial crunch or crisis. So in those conditions, the microbiological profile will be helpful. Regularly, it has to be done to see that the environment is sterile. HEPA filter will work out for having a sterile fill just over the patient's bed. So that also will be adding to the safety for the infrastructure.
No, I'm not talking of a air handling unit or a modular theater. I'm talking about, because air handling
Yeah,
unit.
that's why I say.
Okay.
I was talking of the split AC basically. So air
Yeah.
handling unit, madam is told about that. If it's there, that is ideal, and how it can be taken care of. But if it's not there, if there is only split AC, then the microbiological profile and the filters can be used to clean, and we have a particulate count that can be done regularly just to see or check whether we are not into the unsafe zone. The HEPA filter, as I said, in the ceiling which is there, we have a compact one also that can be used for the filtration.
Is it
And the
always
airflow.
necessary? Is it always necessary to have the operation room in the first floor, or suppose one doesn't have facility for first floor?
It can be in the ground floor or the same floor. There's not that it has to be in the first floor, but it has to be segregated from the other areas, ideally. So there has to be a gap or segregation, basically. It may not be, it should not be always like it's in the second or first floor.
The other thing is that regarding painting, so some people say you should be granite, some say marble, but these are again expensive. So someone who's starting out on the theater, and suppose it is not his own premises, then any special paint that they can apply in lieu of granite or marble? Marble, this is porous, so it is not good.
Yes. So for the OT, you are telling, no?
OT, yeah, OT inside OT.
OT room. We have epoxy, a lot of materials have come out now for just covering of the floors and surfaces and the walls also. That can be used as a temporary basis, or that will also work out in there. That is non-porous. Those are the synthetic materials. Epoxy wall paints are also available, which can be done. You have different grades, of course, in that. So that may be compatible and also safe, and moreover, it may be economical also.
Because humidity free, the idea is that there should be
Humidity
porous
free.
and
Yes, humidity free. So it should be non-porous mostly.
Dr. Anupam, sometimes we get questions from people saying that they have a vertical sterilizer. So can you highlight the advantage or disadvantage of a horizontal sterilizer, a vertical sterilizer?
I have not gone into that much detail about, as I said, autoclave is again a different this thing. So there are different types of autoclaves. I don't think that would actually make much of a difference. They can be vertical. It depends mainly on the space and those kind of things and the amount that you need to autoclave. There are different classes of autoclaves. So that is more important rather than whether it's vertical or horizontal.
So,
But then,
so when someone is buying an autoclave, what things they should ensure that is there in that autoclave to make it like safe?
Again, basically, these should be standard. Again, autoclaves are used at a lot of places. They can be used at dental places, and every kind of autoclave has a different need. So from ophthalmic, I do not actually.
So would you say a vacuum process is very important?
Yeah, so that vacuum, yes. So vacuum is necessary for the drying process. If the dry cycle is based on that vacuum process. So if that is done, so that will be better for ophthalmic setup.
Vacuum and temperature both should be regulated properly. That is
the temperature and all that would be the standard setting. The dry cycle is as important. So for the dry cycle, the vacuum based would be a better yes.
There is a question for Dr. Samrat. Like we have HEPA filters and we have this microvascular profile like air particulate count. So how frequently we should do it? And what is the authenticity or like how do we know basically whether it will be a safe environment?
So even if you have HEPA filters, you need to check because HEPA filters you cannot clean a HEPA filter. So sometimes people try to clean a HEPA filter to increase its life. So you need to do this particulate count. So particulate count, minimum it should be at least done twice a year. So if you can do twice a year particulate count, and each of these particulate count has their own standard. So if you do a particulate count twice a year, then at least you know whether your OT environment is safe or not. And please remember, if you have HEPA filters, don't try to clean HEPA filters. You cannot clean HEPA filters, and if you try to clean HEPA filters, you may in fact damage them.
We have company specification who have provided basically the replacement timing, like it is this much duration, after that it has to be replaced. So ideally it should be replaced rather than be just cleaning and putting it again, because it depends on the micropore size of the filter that actually helps out. So if we try to manipulate it, then that is just a normal filter and we are just going by the infectious part of it. So better not to clean it from our side. It should be done by the engineers which have provided.
No, you cannot clean. You should not clean HEPA filters.
Yes, yes. So we should not try for doing filters. And those stunts like cleaning ourselves.
Because cleaning of HEPA filters can cause the change in their pores, like
yes.
So that can be effective one. May I ask a question, Dr. Sagar Mayes? In his talk, he has talked about the RT-PCR for every patient or except emergency. So do you recommend at this point also everyone has to go for abnormal, all routine patients should go for the RT-PCR or only for?
Yeah, good afternoon, ma'am. No, actually there are no guidelines as such. I think it's a hospital, each hospital has its own protocol. Presently, we are doing as far as possible. The elective surgeries, we are asking the patients to get an RT-PCR report. And if in other patients like CAM patients or who emergency patients, we at least try to do a rapid antigen test till we know that the vaccination has been covered properly. So after everyone is vaccinated, maybe we can skip all those, but it's not mandatory, definitely. So
I think in AIOS guidelines, they have recommended like normal routine patients, it is not RT-PCR.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. So that's what, there are no specific guidelines that we have to do or we don't have to do, but we definitely may skip. But what we are following right now is we are trying to do. I mean, if possible.
Because this is again a cost.
Yeah,
cost includes about the RT-PCR.
No,
And
we are not doing it. We ask the patients to get it done and come, like the investigations.
yeah, so that is burden to the patient also.
Yes, I mean, but presently we have
For safety.
yeah.
No, it's because our health government is very active and they are doing it free for the patient. They are not charging for the patient. They will do n number. How many number they go, they'll do.
And since how many days you get, like hours you get the report of RT-PCR?
We tell them to get at least 1 day before, 1 day prior. Yeah. And the camp patients and all, we are doing the rapid antigen test instantly, and then we are taking out the patient for surgery. So the rapid test, it takes hardly half an hour. Within half an hour, we are getting the results.
Okay. Thank you.
We call someone to our hospital and get it done. We call the person, they take the sample and give us the report.
I think we have only 1 minute, so
Mandatory.
maybe
Yeah, we can.
we can
Yes,
wrap it up with the
Dr.
closing comments. Dr.
Yeah,
Geetumani and Dr.
Geetumani.
Deepshika, if you would like to comment.
Yes, madam, I would like to invite you for the closing comments, please. And I'm grateful that you have given such platform to us.
Thank you, Dr. Geetumani. Really, it was a wonderful this instruction course, and this very, very important for everyone, not like pre-COVID era and after this COVID and after that also. So I think every talk has given a very key messages like perfect infrastructure, especially for the need and as well for the future need. And second one of the operation theater, all we have to take care of the all safety precautions and measures. Etiquettes again are very important to follow each and everyone. And the OR surveillance is very, very important. That should be taken care by each and every organization. And same time, the sterilization part also should be taken care. So in total, this was very informative talk by each and everyone. So thank you, Dr. Geetumani, for organizing this instruction course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.